Okay, we're answering the delicious question of how do you make creme brulee? This well-known and worldwide famous dessert is probably the simplest dessert and one of the least expensive desserts to make and serve. And I think that might have something to do with why it's been served by so many restaurants. And then again, it's very good, and I can understand that part of it too. But very few restaurants skip the beat on this particular item because it requires no skill and no money almost to make this dish. And it is spectacular. So I've made a couple of small deviations on the creme brulee here to show you what you could do, okay? I'm going to make one with chocolate and vanilla and one with chocolate, vanilla, and sliced banana. Now you can put marinated or unmarinated raspberries and blueberries or poached pears thinly sliced in the bottom of your creme brulee mold, whatever your fancy is, or just have it plain. Some people prefer just the vanilla, and that's fine too. One thing I will point out to you before we get started about making creme brulee is the requirement of the mold. These two molds that I have for you here are creme brulee molds. They're different size. This one is almost twice as big as this one. It depends how much you want for dessert. The important element to notice about these molds is that they are substantially wider than they are tall. Now, if you take a mold like this, for example, this is a custard mold, which is not for making creme brulee in for a very specific reason. The time it takes. First of all, creme brulee is a soft custard. It's not a firm, set custard like a creme caramel or something like that. If you bake a custard, remember, custard being defined as dairy, usually milk or cream, and eggs cooked together, okay? Whether it be a sauce or a dessert or a pudding or whatever, or creme brulee. When you bake the custard, if it takes twice as long to cook the inside of the custard as it does the outside, obviously the outside is going to have to be cooked twice as much as it needs to be to cook the inside. So this is a custard mold for firm custards that are completely cooked all the way through. A creme brulee, the proportion of egg to cream is such that it never sets really firm and hard. Consequently, you don't want it in a mold like this because you'll have to cook it to death on the outside to get the inside of the egg yolk cooked. So this is the reason and why I insist that you make and serve your creme brulees in bona fide creme brulee molds or containers that resemble this in some shape or form, okay? There are a lot of gratin dishes, for example, that you can use for creme brulee molds that work fine. They're not made for creme brulee, but they have that shape, you know? Obviously, ceramic is the way to go. Baking custard in metal is not a good idea for a number of reasons. We'll get into that in the dessert cream class, okay? But for now, the chocolate and vanilla creme brulee and the chocolate and vanilla and banana creme brulee, okay? Now what I've done is I've got 3 cups of cream in accordance with the recipe that you have on your PDF. I have 3 quarts of cream in a saucepan, and we're going to bring that up to a simmer. I have a little bit of water simmering over here because we're going to set these in a hot water bath in the oven briefly to cook them. But first, on the subject of the chocolate, I have a bittersweet here, but you certainly use a semi-sweet. You can even use Hershey's, not Hershey's, but what's the word I'm looking for? Chips, chocolate chips of any type, if you wanted to. Keeping in mind that milk chocolate is not chocolate, of course. So we want to mince this chocolate very small. This is bittersweet. Now, if you don't cut the chocolate small, strange though it may seem, when you get to the bottom of the creme brulee mold and you're eating, you'll end up with little hard pieces of chocolate down there, and you don't want that. So this, I'm going to chop up even finer, see? And we're going to do that. I'm going to put a little bit of chocolate in the bottom of each one of these molds. That one mold is light, a little bit of chocolate. Whoop, there goes the cream. We got it just in time. Alrighty. Got a couple of big pieces in there. Let me get those out of there. Okay. Now I have 6 egg yolks here and 2/3 of a cup of sugar, which we're going to mix together. And in this hot scalded cream that we have back here, we're going to add a little bit of pure vanilla extract, okay? One can certainly use a vanilla bean, and in the dessert creams class, we'll cover that, and how to make the vanilla sugar with the vanilla beans also. Okay, we're going to cream the sugar and egg together slightly so it's nice and smooth. And you don't see any granulated sugar visible in here. The color will change slightly. Now we're going to take the scalded cream, and in a steady stream while whisking, we're going to add the cream. And let me have a medium-sized ladle over there, please. Now, one of the things you should always do when you're about to put, thank you, when you're about to put the custard into the mold is remove the froth that's been created by beating all the air into this during the whisking process. If you don't, you will have froth baked on top. It will affect the surface texture of the creme brulee, okay? Now, if you let this sit long enough, the froth will dissipate, because you may see this as a waste. I see this more as a way of making sure that it comes out perfect. You don't want to let it sit, though, because you want to maintain some temperature on it and then continue the cooking process right now, see? Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this banana, and we're going to use the banana in the little mold there. We're going to cut this paper thin. I'm just going to put a little bit in here. You don't need that much. Just want to get them a little teeny taste of some banana down there when they get down there. This, of course, should be a chocolate and banana surprise, if you will, okay? Now we take the custard, pour it on top. Same thing over here. Take and fill them up to the top. Now, to bake the creme brulee, sometimes, but it is not absolutely necessary, although people do it as a rule, just because this is a custard. You could bake this without a hot water bath, and it would still come out okay. But putting some hot water in the pan when you put it into the oven, which is baking it in a hot water bath, will ensure that you have even temperature around the outside, which is good. So I'm going to show you how I would go about doing that. And what I would do is I take this and I set it, but because I can't get you quite down here, I set this on the shelf of the oven.
I'll bring it in, John.
Okay, you're going to bring it in? Okay, beautiful. I take my water. Because you don't want the water sloshing around when you're picking it up from the table to putting it into the oven. So you set it down where it's going to go. Then you pour the water in. That way you don't have to move it after the water's in, you see? And you go about halfway to 3/4 of the way up the mold. Push it in a little further, boom. There you go. Now, we're going to bake this in accordance with the recipe, which has you baking it at 350, I believe. You can bake this at 325, you can bake this at 375, you can bake this at 400, you can bake this at 425. The reason I sound like that about the temperatures is because you can bake it at a lot of different temperatures. I think ideally, if you don't have a really hot oven, 350 is good. If you have a really hot oven, and don't bake it in a convection oven, just forget that. Bake it in a regular conventional oven. You know, you can bake it 325, 350. When it gets semi-firm and you get the very first brown dot on the top of the creme brulee, take them out immediately. It will appear soft when you take them out, and I'll show you when we take them out. It'll appear to be soft, and it's supposed to be soft. I told you this is a soft custard. Now, some custards, you'll touch them and you'll be looking for it to be firm. Not this one. Just firmer than wet. And we'll be back in time-elapse, 10, 15, 20 minutes, and I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. Okay, the creme brulee coming out of the oven. Here we go. It's been in the oven about 40 minutes at 350. I turned it down to 300 after it was in the oven about 10 minutes. I thought the oven was running too hot. Okay? And see the texture, semi-firm. Now we're gonna do another quick time elapse. I'm gonna give these a few minutes to cool in the refrigerator, about 10 or 15 minutes. Then we're gonna come back and I'll show you how to finish this off with the propane torch, which is something that you have to have in order to do the creme brulee. I'll be right back.
Chef, before you go,
Yeah?
could you tilt the creme brulee container so we can see the
I
top
certainly
color?
can, but they're...
Just give it a little jiggle.
They're set.
Let me get in there, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll be right back. Okay, the creme brulees have cooled off a little bit. I gave them about 20, 25 minutes in the refrigerator on a little rack. And one of the things I did while they were still warm is I wiped off the water lines and things like that were around the outside. And that's the best time to wipe off the outside of the container is, oops, when it's hot. And then avoid sticking your thumb in it at all costs, okay? But that's not going to affect the final outcome of these creme brulees, I'm happy to say. Let's go with the big guy here. And let me demonstrate for you the amount of sugar that should be on the brulee. Now this is regular straight up granulated sugar. And you want an even amount on there. And take off any rocks that are on there. Okay, that looks good. Now the other thing you do before you blast this with the propane torch is get the excess sugar off of here so you don't caramelize sugar on the pan itself, but only on the actual custard, okay? So here's your propane torch. You, of course, can get one of these in any hardware store. Don't concentrate the flame on any one given spot. Rotate it around the brulee, and you'll end up with a better, more even result. And I'm done right there. That was fast. Now, you will allow that to cool for approximately about a minute, and then it becomes hard candy. And I'm going to sit here and talk to you till it becomes hard candy. Now, I mentioned to you earlier that one of the things you can do is put poached pears and raspberries and blueberries and so on and so forth inside of it. And those are good, but always make sure that they're submerged below the surface of the custard during the baking process. If it's something that's going to float, like a blueberry, be careful about popping that in there unless maybe you macerate it in wine or liqueur for some period of time so that it's heavier than the liquid that it's floating in. The other thing is that the creme brulee is sometimes served with a little floret of whipped cream next to it, or sometimes people will serve it with a chocolate dipped strawberry or a pirouette style cookie, or some kind of what's called a gaufrette, which means crispy in French, some kind of crispy cookie, partially because the custard itself is so, excuse me, so soft. Obviously, a glass of good brut champagne with this will always work, you know. And I think over the time that we have spoken, we have hard candy. See there? On top of the brulee. Take a look at that. Now I want you to zoom in on this, Richard, because I want him to see just how hard this is, because I'm going to break this with my finger for him, okay? Let me know when you're all the way in there. Okay, look. Can you hear it breaking? And there's the candy, see? Look at, there it is. See how it's chipping away from it? All right, come back to me. And that is the, in sum, that's a creme brulee. I told you it was easy. Got to have a propane torch, though. Good luck and have fun with this item. Every time you serve it, it's a winner. Have a great evening.